All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm Marilyn Wilson, President of RE Technology and Managing Partner from the Wave Group, a consulting firm in the industry. So get myself in lots of trouble doing lots of projects. And we've got Jack Markham with us today. He is the president of Zurple and works on lots of exciting projects that's been in the industry for a long, long time as well. But he's got a really interesting presentation he's going to take us through today, talking about how to really get serious about building your business by starting with the fundamentals of having a strong sales pipeline in place. You know, sometimes we work an effort to, to build a consistent.
Can't hear. Are you there, Marilyn?
I am. Can you hear me?
Now I can. Yep.
Okay, that's strange. Okay, it's been one of those days. The gremlins have been in the GoToWebinars today. Anyway, I wanted to introduce Jack. He's got a really good program to talk to all of us as sales professionals about the way to really achieve the goals that you're looking for. And it doesn't happen just because we want it to, right, Jack? There's a lot of work that goes into it. So he's going to tell us about building a growth-focused pipeline. So with that, I'll take it away, Jack. Let's hear all your great stuff and great wisdom you've got for us.
Awesome. Well, so I think I'll start with some pain points, because I think that, as we look into our business and we're trying to figure out and the timing right now with COVID, and I think some of us were really concerned at the beginning of COVID. If you think back to March and the uncertainty, there's still some uncertainty in the industry, although there's this pressure building that is really exciting. But I think this is a perfect time to take a step back and say, okay, I want to grow my business. I want to scale my business. What are the things I have to overcome, right? The obstacles. And I think number one, it's lead generation. And I think more and more agents I talk to just have to wrap their head around how important lead generation is, and not just, well, I need some new leads here and there, I need to work my referral base. No, you need to focus on generating new leads into your business. The average agent today generates less than 10 leads a month. And if you correlate that to any other business outside of our industry, I'm not sure how, again, if you had a store, any type of storefront like a coffee store, with 10 customers walking in per month, how would you be able to last? And I think that you need to take that approach as a real estate agent and look at your business the same way. And then the next part really is lead follow-up. And this stat always gets me. It gets me fired up, right? Because 43% of the leads never even get followed up with in this industry, and the ones that do, we're just not touching enough. 1.2 touches per lead. That you look at the stat and say, well, is lead generation the biggest problem, or is it lead follow-up and conversion? There's a ton of leads around us, but if we're not actually following up and we're not taking that process very serious, then we're wasting a lot of time and money, and then therefore, we're not generating that return on investment, which is huge. And then the last part is lead conversion. And I think time and money both being wasted. If you think that, we throw around this 3% a lot in this industry, but most agents aren't even achieving that 3%. And then even if you are, think about this for a minute. That means 97% of the leads that you've spent time or money on are going nowhere. So how do you get more out of that, right? How do you increase that? How do you get more ROI of that? So I thought today, Marilyn, I kind of break this down into two parts. I think part one is understanding today's consumer and how it correlates to lead generation. So what is today's consumer? How do they look and value online information versus maybe 10 years ago when it wasn't the case? And then how does that play into a lead generation model, and what are some things you have to think about as far as putting together a lead generation model? And then I thought part two, as we close the day, if I could give all of the agents 3 things to go and focus on. So after this webinar, can you have 3 things that you can literally sit down and say, okay, over the next 90 days, these are the 3 things that I need to focus on to make sure that I get that growth, or I see that taking some more market share in my local market, right, and growing my business. So so hopefully that works for everybody, and if that's good, I think we could just dive into lead generation, if that's good with you, Marilyn.
That sounds great. Let's go.
All right. So let's talk about why lead generation is so painful. I think, if you look at the online consumer and the traffic, dating back to 2004, which I know is a long time, but even taking 2011, right? So 2011 to today, what you have seen, and we've all kind of experienced this, is that real estate traffic, or the amount of consumers going online and doing real estate searches, have really dramatically increased, right? And if you kind of did the math here, you've seen an increase of around 250% just in the last 7 years. That's a huge amount. Think about that for a minute. That's a huge amount of people that have completely changed the way they shop or gather information for real estate. The problem with this is, by the way, this is a good thing. The problem with that is it haven't really correlated to more transactions, right? So in the last 5 years, we have really kind of been flat on what we've averaged in the US as far as transactions. And I just think of, I just calculate one side of the transaction, which is about 5.5 million homes. And that's been the average for the last 5.5 years. So if you look at this, one would say, well, this is actually really good for the industry, probably more transactions, right? If you go to any other industry, that's what you're going to see. However, in our industry, it has not. And so what you've seen is the increase of online traffic, but it has not increased the amount of transactions. And really what that's done to the real estate agent and the broker is it's increased the competition. And it's made life a little bit more difficult. And instead of going out there and capturing more of that market, you've probably been slightly losing market share over the last 5 years. And so those are things that I think immediately we have to fix for every single agent and broker, especially on today's call, right? Like what can we focus on to make sure that this doesn't continue? How do we go and grow that and take back some of that market share? So I think one of the things is I think it's frustrating for all of us is that search now, and really when it comes to online searching for real estate or pictures and details of homes, this has been a form of entertainment now. And just because there's interest online, that does not necessarily equal the intent, right? I think more and more consumers will, pick up their phone and hop on a search while they're maybe laying in bed tonight. Instead of watching TV, they're looking at, pictures and details of homes and thinking about, man, in a couple of years, I'd love to, go look at these homes. They're becoming a lead before they even know they're in the market, right? And so I think like what we've seen as real estate agents is where it's hurt us the most is over the last, several years, we've seen our referral and our past clients and the sphere of influence. These are leads and transactions that we used to count on. We've actually seen a decline there because now our referrals, even from our close friends and family, have been declining because they've been becoming leads on sites like Zillow's or iBuy situations or even Redfin, even before we can get the referral. And so those are things that we have to think about. And we didn't necessarily want to think about that, but now we are in the business of thinking about that because our competition is just dramatically increased. Now let's talk slightly about COVID, because I think this year we got hit with probably the most challenging situation that we've all been faced with, and that's caused some great uncertainty, and some of us are still trying to figure out how do we rebound from that. Where do I go from here? The consumer search volume for homes, I mean, it bottomed out, right? Like a 30% drop is the biggest drop that we've seen probably in the last 7 years. And that's a dramatic drop. Now, one would say that, well, that's good because there was low inventory, but when the inventory dropped out as well, then that's really what hurt. But since then, if you look at this graph, this has rebounded above the pre-COVID level. So the consumer has bounced back. Like they are all in at this point, right? You have twice, if not 3 times the amount of buyers doing searches on the major search engines, on social media, on Zillow. So they're definitely back. And that's actually correlated to today's seller. You have today's sellers because they're actually making up some of those buyers. And people are starting to realize that maybe if I'm going to work from home, this house isn't the right house and I need to be seeing what else is on the market. And so we've been seeing a dramatic change in the consumer, and that's exciting, right? And most experts are predicting that Q3, which is what we're in now, and Q4 will be an awesome rebound, one of the biggest rebounds that we've seen in the last 10 years. and 2021, they're forecasting to be a fantastic year in real estate. So for all of you on today's call, it's how do we take advantage of that, right? How do we implement the right things to put ourselves in a position to take advantage of that? And I think it really.
I mentioned this to you yesterday a little bit, Jack, but we just did a study that's not even published yet that showed about a third of the people, consumers that we talked to, said exactly what you're saying, is that my house is driving me crazy. And about a quarter of them said if by chance, most people, by the way, the highest number was people want hybrid working situations. They don't want to go back to work in the office full time. We've changed people's belief about that now. But about half of them said, I'd rather do a hybrid situation. And if so, that may let me move out of state, move to the suburbs, move to the city, move somewhere else. So it's potentially creating a real, like an exciting level of demand. And these are the kinds of things that we need to talk to, because consumers still think that because we're in an economic crisis that it's all about real estate. This time it's not our fault, right? We're doing great. We have to make sure people know that. Right,
and I can speak firsthand because, you know, not only am I the president of Zurple, but I run three brands for Constellation. So I'm the CEO of 3 different companies, and what I can tell you from having, you know, pretty large employee staff for those 3 companies that, you know, essentially report to me, we haven't been back in the office, and I have 2 offices in San Diego and 1 in Boise that we don't have people in, and we're shifting around, and people are working more remotely, and quite honestly, in some of our offices, I have no intentions of changing that for the remainder of this year, right? And so you start thinking about those employees that always have an office to go to, and now they don't. All of a sudden, that house that they bought 5 years ago, they're back in the market. They didn't even know they're going to be back in the market, but now they are, right? And this is our opportunity as real estate professionals to influence those consumers and to help them because they weren't ready, and we've got to get them ready, right? And that's our biggest influence, is we can dramatically change this inventory situation, because I think there's a lot of those consumers that are on the bubble that are looking for expertise, which is where we come in.
Exactly.
So, you know, kind of going further, and what Marilyn and I are talking about is really trying to understand today's consumer. And I know we've definitely heard this stat before, that 9 out of 10 consumers start their search online, which is true. That hasn't changed. If anything, right, this is more true than ever before. Why they're going online? Pictures and details of homes still the #1 driver. So this is funny, because I don't think this has changed in the last 20 or 30 years. Like, even going back to where consumers would walk into a real estate office and meet with an agent, why did they walk into that office? They wanted the paper printouts of pictures of homes and have that agent go and schedule this, right? Like, this hasn't changed. What's changed is a little bit on this content. Right now, today's consumer, there's much more emphasis on neighborhood and school data. And I can tell you that if you start looking at consumer demographics and understanding that the second largest demographic that's in real estate right now that's purchasing and selling homes is Generation X. And these are people that already were first-time home buyers, and now that they have kids and they're raising a family, like, this information is important. And so, you know, I think one of the things that we coach agents a lot on is, don't make sure that if we know consumers are looking for this data, don't make them go to other places to get it. Don't make them go to a Zillow. Don't make them do a search on this. Provide this for them, right? Like, think of your business as a storefront, and your storefront, your website, you got to have this on your website, so that when people come into your website, it's this complete store, and they're walking down aisles of real estate content, and this is one of them. I think the other big difference, though, is the options that we have as consumers now to find this information. It is not just the real estate and the real estate agent. And I think that, you know, for years and years, we were the pilots, right? We controlled the information, we controlled the content. And I think if you want to be successful in today's real estate with today's consumer, you've got to be comfortable being this co-pilot and knowing that there's a lot of options out at the fingertips of the consumer. How are you going to compete? You're not just competing with local agents now. You are competing with some bigger companies. And so you've got to provide the similar experience that some of these companies are. Even if one of these are your brand, that's great, right? Even if you're a RE/MAX agent, That's awesome that they're going to RE/MAX. How can you also provide that experience, that personalized experience as the neighborhood expert, right? RE/MAX is the brand. How do you go a little bit step further and become that neighborhood expert that's branding RE/MAX? And I think that's that's something to really hone in on over the next 90 days. And then this really speaks volumes of where you have to focus as a real estate agent, because 70% of consumers today are choosing their agent based on the first person that can provide relevant content. So let that sink in for a minute. What's key today and what's king for the consumer is relevant content, not value proposition. And I think at times we get that backwards as real estate agents, or even like in an industry, we get that backwards as salespeople, right? Like the first thing and what's natural to us is we want to tell people why they should work with us. We want to blow the competition. We want to explain how great we are and how long we've been in the industry and all this stuff. But the reality is the consumer doesn't care about that right now. What they want is pictures and details of homes. They want data. They want relevant content. And so most consumers are choosing their agent based on the first person that can provide them that. And that's even today's seller. So you're looking at live charts of today's seller and how we track today's seller, and based on search parameters around values of homes and getting values of homes. If you're today's seller, there's been a huge increase on this type of searching. And so even today's sellers is looking for relevant content. And so I know in talking to agents, sometimes there's confusion about, well, buyers shop differently than sellers. Not really, right? We're seeing the same increase in search keywords on the seller side that we are on buyer side. And so I think the important thing is understanding that consumers, 60% of them are going to make their choice in less than one day. You have to make sure that your business has this brand identity and that you are seen and being found by today's consumer as this neighborhood expert, right?
And I think someone that's supportive of them, right? Someone that's there to serve them.
Yep.
And, I call it me advertising. That just doesn't work. Nobody really cares that you did 42 deals last month. That's not what they may care ultimately once you get engaged with them to understand that they're working with a professional. But if you don't give them anything interesting, you're never going to get to that. You're never going to get to the table to even have that conversation. Yeah.
And they definitely do care, right? Like they definitely do care. There is a point in the timeline, and we'll go over the timeline, that the consumers, once they start to get idea of what they are in the market for and their exact timeline, their gears shift and it does become value proposition. And so one of the things that we coach is, if you handle up front the relevant content and being that neighborhood expert, the value proposition and the brand identity will actually build themselves. And you won't have to spend so much effort on explaining why you're awesome, because it's going to be showcased in the first part of that, right? And I think it's important for agents to understand that why consumers are going online, why 9 out of 10 consumers start their search online is not to look up awesome real estate agents. And wouldn't that be awesome if that was the case, though? Because that would change a lot of frustrations. But the truth is, as a consumer, and we all do it, right? We all do it. We know we can go online and hide behind the wall of this internet, and no one can talk to us without our permission. But we can gather all this information, right? Like if I gave everybody on today's call $500 and said, go buy a new TV, this is for a brand new TV, I guarantee you there'd be very few people that would say, okay, let me hop in the car and I'm going to go straight to Best Buy. Every single person would probably hop on Google and start looking at TVs before they walked into Best Buy. And you have to know that we're programmed for that. And so your real estate consumers that you're trying to get a hold of, it's the same thing. They're behind this wall. And so how do you deliver this value and kind of break that wall down? And I think, to me, you've got to understand the value that you're going to bring online. And that's not how awesome you are as a real estate agent, and that's not how many transactions you've done. But to me, that is how much are you personalizing the experience for these people? Because this is what we're addicted to, Marilyn. Every single day, this is where we go. Facebook, Netflix, Amazon, right? Instagram, even Apple Music or Spotify. Everything we do is so personalized to us, right? My Amazon looks different than your Amazon, and same with Netflix, right? And Netflix is probably one of my favorite companies right now, because especially through COVID. And I don't know about you, Marilyn, but I get the Netflix emails to come to my inbox, and none of them come to spam. And the reason why is because every single Netflix email feels like they're friends. Like, I know his name's John Netflix, and he talks to me all the time, right? He knows exactly what I'm watching. and just take a look at those emails for a minute, because they're so personalized, they speak to me. And so if you're a real estate agent, it's not about delivering this value proposition, it's about delivering this personalized online experience. This is what we expect as a consumer now. Exactly. And so if you're a real estate agent, you have to deliver this same type of experience.
Exactly.
And if even if you have a website today, look at your website for a minute, and then imagine someone lands on that website today. For whatever reason, they jump to your website. Are you giving them this? Because I think we do this for people we know and one-on-one conversations. I think real estate agents are very good at that. Well, what about the people that don't know you? How are you personalizing their experience? Because I think that's really what's going to move your business and scale your business, right?
Yep.
So, definitely something to think about, taking a step back and saying, wow, like every day, yes, I am attracted to these things because it speaks to me. How can I deliver the same type of value to my consumers, whether they know me or not? And I took this right from NAR. So NAR does a good job at kind of doing surveys for consumers. And this was a survey, I don't know, probably 8 months to a year ago now. And it just said, hey, what do consumers value from real estate websites? And I think the interesting thing out here is not necessarily what ranks number 1, 2, 3, etc., but it's how far down the list real estate agent contact info is.
Right.
And and that's not to beat down the agents. I think it's just to understand where you rank. And I think if you understand this and know this, this is actually going to help you do a better job at saying, okay, this is what they value, this is what they're looking for, let me give it to them, right? Because the other side of, if you looked at this survey at all, or you know what the survey I'm talking about, the other part of the survey was, it actually said that today's consumer, as they're searching for real estate, 85% of them ended up becoming a lead on a real estate agent's website. I look at that and say, consumers are still saying to us that they want an agent. They're just saying how they're meeting agents has become quite different, and we've got to play that game now.
Well, and I also think sometimes we think if we let the consumer get too much information from us, that somehow we're giving away the shop, or giving away our secret sauce. It's just the opposite. Consumers appreciate the fact that you're sharing your insight with them, and they'll be attracted to you because of it. They're not going to say, oh, I don't need them. I think sometimes people think, well, I won't need an agent if there's so much information. That's absolutely the opposite of what consumers believe.
No, it's a great point, because I will say, like, as consumers, right, we're relentless. And the thing is we're all consumers. So you should know today's consumers, because we all are today's consumers. And I think we're relentless. When we want information, nothing's going to stop us from getting that information. So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you going to be the one that delivers it, or are you going to force them to go somewhere else? Because they will go somewhere else, right? Today's consumer goes to 8 to 10 different websites before actually talking to an agent. So if you don't give it to them, where are they going to go? Zillow? Do you want them on Zillow? How many other agents are they going to meet, right? Like, this is where you control how your consumers meet other people, and you want to control that to where you don't want them meeting anyone else, right? You want to control that as much as possible.
Exactly.
And then, so this is the other part. This is the other part of the survey that I was talking about. Is 85% of these consumers have visited the site of a real estate agent while searching properties online. So, like I said, to me, this speaks volume of today's consumer. They're not saying that I don't want an agent and I'm going to go to iBuy, and iBuy is that's going to be the future of real estate. In fact, the consumer is saying the exact opposite. The consumer is saying, look, we do value a real estate agent, but our expectations and the information that we expect from real estate agents has just become different, right? And I think, like, we have to now get on board with that, because the thing about the consumer is once the consumer gets on the train and goes north, there is no going back south. there is no coming back, right? And COVID has really put the consumer in the situation where they realize that, oh, you mean I don't have to physically go to open houses? I can do this virtually.
Exactly. They love it.
They love it. And will there still be open houses? Yes, but you will see that the consumer is not going to go backwards now. Like, this virtual stuff is going to actually now just become more and more popular, and that's just how we act as consumers. So I think the other important part of this is understanding consumers is really being comfortable understanding the consumer timeline. And I say this all the time, and I get funny faces all the time, or back in the day when I did speak in person, Marilyn, I got funny faces all the time.
I remember those days. Airplanes, remember those things? They were kind of amazing.
Feels like so long ago. But, you know, I constantly say there's no such thing as a bad lead. And I think that is absolutely true. I think that the difference between a bad lead and a good lead is the agent understanding where they are in the timeline. And so I have broken down the timeline of a consumer into 3 phases. Phase 1 is this pre-research phase. And this is 85% of the leads that we're generating in this industry. And these are people that don't have real estate agents, that actually didn't even know they were becoming a lead, or didn't even know they were in the market until all of a sudden they're smack dab in the middle of the market and they're looking at pictures and details of homes. Like, this is sometimes a 16-month process, and this is what's frustrating for us as agents, because our focus is the here and now. Who can I work with right now and make a difference, right? But these are the biggest group that you can influence and really grow your pipeline. Then this next phase is phase 2, and this is more of the active research. And this is where you start to get, as a real estate agent, you start to get a little bit more comfortable, because now you're starting to interact. You're starting to exchange emails and text messaging, right? And we're decent at this. And this is where, like, look, this is our expertise is right here, right? In phase 3, and this is the buying, which is actually the shortest part. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of behind the scenes, and this is where the real estate agent really earns the money here, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that the consumer has no idea what's going on, right? And the agent does such a great job here, and this is really where you earn your commission. But look at this. This is 27 months, Marilyn. That's a long time, right? That's a long time for an agent to stay relevant with a consumer. Long time.
It sure is.
I think, and today's seller, you know, kind of fast forward a little bit, not too different, right? Like, maybe a little shorter. The pre-research phase is probably a little shorter, but I think 21 months is a long time too. And so I think, look, there's agents today that are generating these leads, Marilyn, and I guarantee you they're saying, God, these leads are horrible. They're not horrible though. Like, these leads are future transactions. They're horrible because you might not necessarily have the right tools to actually engage and turn these into conversations. And I think that's really where the second part of today, where I want to focus on, and really what I've focused so much of our technology at Zurple. I saw this 2 years ago or 3 years ago and said, like, this is the biggest thing that we can solve for agents and brokers, is this period of where leads are becoming leads, and they go to this dark place and they never get responded to, because it's not that agents don't want to, it's that we don't know how at times. We don't know what to say, we don't know how, and we kind of lose interest because we're getting pulled in a million different directions, and, you know, we're putting on a fire every day. But these are future transactions, and I think, like, having the right technology that can help you engage with those, that is dramatically going to change your business in the long run.
And I think with sellers, it's even more difficult, because you may not only have to sell ultimately your expertise, you have to sell the rationale as to why being a seller makes sense, right? So you have to educate them on mortgage rates and pricing trends and a whole bunch of other things that, you know, ultimately convince a consumer this really is the right time for me to sell. That's I think it's a lot stickier than it is with someone that says, I want that house, let's go do it, right? It's a lot harder.
Yeah, I think there's much more influence that, from an agent standpoint, I think you have to influence quite a bit, right? And I think it's understanding some of the trends in your market and really becoming that neighborhood expert, right? So if you have a market that is, you know, the next 24 months is going to be, it's going to, you know, be overflowing with new build. I mean, to me, that's a huge influence to today's seller. Like, this needs to be on your radar sooner than later, because once this new build hits the market, and, how does your house compete with that? And I just think like there's just much more, there's probably much more interviewing by the consumer going on today's seller, as well as like as a agent, you're influencing quite a bit on today's seller, and you make the difference of whether or not that house hits the market or not.
Exactly.
And I think like, as this slide pretty much shows, I think for both buyers and sellers, I think in phase 1 and phase 2, what we kind of talked about is it's really showing and providing that relevant content. It's, it's not necessarily showcasing how awesome you are. It's really showcasing the data and the numbers and the relevant content, pictures and details, or why as a seller, you should be putting your house up now versus 6 months from now or 12 months from now, right? And then this is where your value proposition comes in, right? This is where, honestly, you earn the commission dollars. And I know I've had a lot of these conversations in the last 12 months. If you're doing this the right way, so meaning you are doing a hell of a job at providing relevant content, you really are the neighborhood expert, and then you're really doing a good job at behind the scenes and value proposition and working your butt off for your clients and putting out all these fires, you never should have to discount your commission. Ever, because there's a value, right? There's a value in that, and I think most consumers don't understand this. And I think what happens is some agents they run into in the beginning, the consumers start to question, why am I paying for this? And I think when they meet a good agent that has the right tools, that has the focus on relevant content, that has the value proposition, never, if you have this in your business and you've built this sound business, should never have to discount your commission, because you are worth every single penny, right? And you will prove it time and time again to these consumers. And then iBuy isn't necessarily your biggest problem, or isn't necessarily your biggest competition.
Makes sense.
All right, so let's dive into lead generation, because I think where Marilyn and I first started this conversation today was just understanding the importance of lead generation. And I know, Marilyn, you and I chatted yesterday about it. Still boggles my mind how many agents you and I talk to that really don't have a good plan on lead generation, and maybe not even know how many leads they need in their business to grow. Like, it's easy for me as an agent to say, well, this year I want to grow my business 20%. But do you know what that means? Do you know how many leads you're going to need to increase in order to grow your business? And so, part of the coaching that we do at Zurple is really this, and where we come up with this isn't guessing. And this really is talking to our clients, right? And so as a part of Constellation Real Estate Group, we have 15 companies and 500,000 agents using our products. And so I'm fortunate enough and lucky enough to be able to talk to those agents and do surveys and understand what some top producers are doing, and people that are really serious about growing their business. What are they doing and how do they think about their business? And this is what we've come up with, right? And our clients at Zurple and the agents that we talk to at Zurple, they're usually in this 3 or 4 or 5 to 6 transactions, and this is per month. So let me break this down. If you want, maybe you're in the 1 or 2 or even the 2 to 3 transactions per month, and you want to get to 3 or 4 transactions per month, then what we have found from other agents and brokers that we've talked to and the best practices and how it correlates is you got to have at least 40 new leads each month. Now, you can't do that and not have the right approach and not have the right tools, right? So those kind of go hand in hand. But I think it starts with understanding new leads, because I say this all the time, and I think Zurple is awesome. I think Zurple is one of the premier products. And of course, I'm biased, and it's my company, so I'm allowed to say that.
Of course you are.
I think the technology is only as good as the leads that you have to implement them on. So I can give you Zurple, but if you aren't generating enough leads, Zurple's only going to get you so far, right? And so I think it's you have to understand that, look, if I want to increase my transactions per month, then I really need to focus on lead generation and have a plan there. And I think it's
rule of thumb is I got to get 10 to get 1 to close. So if I'm doing everything along the line right, even if I'm doing everything along the right, I need 10 to get 1 to close, just for simple math, right?
Yep. And that's why I kind of put this together as this visual, because I think it's one thing to see numbers and I'm a visual person, so I think this is also pretty helpful for agents to see it visually. But if you look at this as your funnel or your pipeline or whatever, however you want to talk about it, right? At the top of the funnel, it is website visitors. And so I look at this as, let's say all of us on today's call, we're all going in on a coffee store, right? Like, forget this real estate. We're going to go buy a coffee store, and we're going to have a storefront, and we're going to get people to come in. Well, this funnel doesn't change. It's the same funnel. Like, I don't care what business or industry you're in. This is the same funnel that we would have to focus on and think about. The difference is, as a storefront, I would be, okay, how many people can we get to walk in our door? But as a real estate agent, you have the luxury of saying, well, I don't need a storefront. I have a website, and I can make this a web store, right? As long as I have the right content that engages with consumers, now it's about how many website visitors can I drive there? And then understanding that not all visitors become leads. Not all leads become contacts. And I guarantee you everyone on today's call knows what I'm talking about with that, right? Because that's the frustration. But think about this for a minute. If go back to my very first slide that said, today's average agent generates 10 or less leads a month. How many of those 10 leads are actually going to be contacts? And how many of those out of 10 leads and maybe 7 contacts are going to be active consumers, meaning they are responding to you and they're active and they're answering emails and text messages? And then out of that, how many are going to be motivated, meaning you're doing listing presentations or you're showing them houses? And then out of that, how many are going to do transactions? And you start to get down to the end of this funnel and you're like, crap, out of 10 leads, I'm left with a half. Right. And that's the problem, right? That's the problem. It's not that the leads suck. It's that we don't have enough. It's a numbers game. And so this is where you start plugging in numbers like 40 leads instead of 10, and you dramatically see a big difference here, right? When you get to the bottom of that transactions and income, or, gross commission income, which is why we're in this business. And so, kind of as we move into part 2 of this, Marilyn, I kind of knowing that funnel, I think it comes down to really 3 things that you as an agent have to focus on in order to grow your business. And I've kind of put it in these 3 areas, and I've kind of simplified this as much as possible because I don't think real estate has to be complicated. Now, I know sometimes there's transactions that become complicated and we got to put fires out. So, man, if we could simplify the first half of our business, how much time would that save us to go and put out fires in the rest? So, look, I think it starts with the ability to be found. 9 out of 10 consumers start their search online. How are they going to find you? That's the first question or problem or riddle you have to solve. How are they going to find you? You're right. Just because you have a website doesn't mean that you're searchable. Doesn't mean people are going to find you. You've got to determine, number 1, how am I going to be found? Number 2, right? It leads right into, it leads right into this next portion is how are you getting connected? It's one thing to be found, and I think there's probably agents on today's call that are doing a good job being found. And I think what they would probably say is, leads aren't a problem. I just can't get these people to talk to me. And I think that's the other portion, is being connected. And I don't necessarily think that that's just email campaigns or marketing tools. And I think that's been one of the misconceptions in real estate for quite some time, is that, well, lead generation, yes, it's about having a website, but when it comes to having conversations, you need the right CRM. I think there's a little bit of that, but I think that the truth is that if you want to get connected to more leads, this is still a website front-end business problem and solution that you can solve with a really kick-butt website. And sure, it should be connected to some, dynamic marketing platform. But look, if you want to have better conversations with leads that you're generating, having the personalized experience that you provide on your website, giving them your own Zillow type experience, is going to put you in the position to have better conversations because of the relevant content. Now, how you stay involved, which is the third part of this, and especially after learning that 27-month or that 21-month timeline, how do you stay involved? That will dramatically come down to your marketing platform, and not just having a standard CRM, but having a lead intelligent platform that can be connected to your website so you can see what behavior triggers, and I'll share some of that. So these are the 3 things that I think, as you walk away from this call, how do you classify your business? What do you want to go attack in the next 90 days, right? And I think, the first part of this is what I talked about, is location matters, and being found, whether you're this coffee store, which we're seeing here, And just having a website but not being found, it's the same as the coffee store on the left. Now this coffee store on the right that is on a busy sidewalk on the corner, every single agent on today's call has the ability to do that. Every single agent has the ability, and it's not that hard, right? You just got to have a really good consumer-focused website, and then you decide how do you want that to be found, right? And I've put a bunch of different lead sources here, and I think the key is to diversify. Don't just feel like you got to dump and spend a bunch of money on lead generation. I think it's a good combination of spending time and money, and you make that decision because every business is a little different. But if you have more time and less money, then invest the time. Invest 2 hours a day on lead generation. If you don't have the time and you have more money, then yeah, invest in diversifying and coming up with different sources on how you're going to be found. There's a ton of ways to be found by today's consumer. It doesn't have to be just buying a bunch of leads, quite honestly. So once you're doing that though, right? Once you're doing that, the number one goal. So if I asked everybody on today's call, and I'm sure, Marilyn, that you probably would already know their answer. If I was to ask this question is, if you generated a lead right now, everybody on today's call generated a lead right now, what would your number one goal be with that lead?
Connect with them. Talk to them.
Yeah, most people would say, I want to talk to them, or I want to convert the lead, I want to get them in my car, I want them to do a pre-approval, all these things, right? And no one's wrong, but those are end results, right? Those are end results. That's not a goal. The number one goal, if you want to get to that end result, you've got to have a goal that gets you there. And the number one goal is you have to stop their search. The average consumer in real estate goes to 8 to 10 different websites before talking to an agent. You've got to make sure they do not go to another website once they hit your website. Even if you're generating leads on Zillow, right? Do you want them to go back to Zillow every time they want to look at a home? Absolutely not. Nothing against Zillow, but how many other agents do you want to introduce them to? You don't want to help them meet another agent, right? So you got to stop their search. And the number one way to do that is, how do you get them back to your website? That is your first thought. How do I get them back to my website? Whether I call them, email them, text them, doesn't matter. My number one goal is, how do I get them back to the website? And how do I do that? Relevant content. Eliminate other search engines. Don't give them a reason to go back to a Google, a Facebook, a Zillow, a Redfin. Don't give them a reason. Make sure that they're in your website and you're just feeding them relevant content, right? And so this is really how it looks. If you want to be connected, this is how it looks. It starts with the consumer, it starts with your website, and then your lead conversion system, and it's a cycle. And every time they come back to your website, your lead conversion system, your marketing platform, picks up on what they're doing on your website, gives you that information, and you're re-engaging the consumer, and it's a cycle. And before you know it, what have you done? You've done a hell of a job building brand identity. You've really stood out as this neighborhood expert, and you didn't have to showcase how awesome you are or how many transactions. It was really about providing this personalized experience to the consumer, right? And so, you think about what you need to drive engagement, and I think it's these 4 things, right? So keeping this in mind, this cycle, but also using these 4 drivers to help complete that cycle for you. Number 1, speed to lead. The stat that Real Trends put out, I think it was, a couple years ago, that said it takes the average agent 8 hours to respond to a new lead. How many other agents are they going to meet if it's taking you 8 hours, right? You've got to be the first to respond, and you got to have a system, because no, I don't expect you to respond at 3 o'clock in the morning when you get a lead. But you better have something that helps you or partners up with you, or technology that can help you with a conversation with that lead at 3 in the morning, because that particular lead wants information at 3 a.m. You've got to deliver, right? And so speed to lead, it is the one thing you got to solve. You've got to be first.
And the one thing that I would give credit to Zillow for is that I think they've trained the agents that do buy advertising there. They've trained them to respond very, very quickly. So if you can do that everywhere, and like you say, arm your website to respond even when you physically cannot do it yourself, that's so critical.
Yeah, and it's funny because they did a study on this. It's been 2 or 3 years, and I know this because I know a lot of the good people at Zillow. They were tired of hearing their leads suck, to be honest with you, and so they
Right.
put a lot more effort into why do our leads suck? And it
Mhm.
wasn't, like I said, it wasn't that the leads sucked. It's that agents weren't reaching out to their leads,
Exactly.
right? 40, again, half the leads in this industry that are generated never get responded to. That's going to make a lead suck. I mean, I don't care who you are or how good you are or how long you've been in the industry. If leads aren't being followed up, those aren't going to be good leads. And so I think Zillow put a lot of work and effort into educating their clients on, look, it's all about speed to lead. You got to be the first one that responds to these leads. And then the next thing is, I also think that one of the reasons why agents don't respond to leads is I think there's a level of intimidation and I don't know what to say. Right? And I think so the next thing you need is this lead insights, because this is going to help you have better conversations instead of calling up and being a salesperson, which, let's be honest, we're in a world now that no one wants a sales call, right? No one wants a sales email or a spam email, right? Like, we have junk folders for that now, and we have do not call lists for that. And so, in order to be an agent, in order to be successful, in order to have better conversations, you need some insights on what these leads and what's important to these leads, because at the end of the day, having the lead insight is going to allow you to understand what relevant content is for each consumer. And then once you reach out to those consumers using the lead insights, turning that into relevant content, think about the brand that you're building. Think about your brand identity and that, being that neighborhood expert, right? If these four things are the only thing you take from this call, these are four things that you can absolutely focus on that can truly drive better engagement among the leads that you're already generating today. And I think then,
maybe add one thing to that too, is going back to your 27-month incubation time and your 20-month. You've got to have patience with this. It's just like if you go back to your funnel, right? You don't jump from here to here. You've got to work people down the funnel, and that takes time. So if you want enough down there to pay for the mortgage and everything else, you got to make sure that there's people being fed at every single level all the time within your funnel. So and you're doing these four things to keep people moving down closer to being a transaction.
Yeah, and look, I think, the one thing we hear a lot at Zurple is, and I'm sure there's agents on today's call that are saying the same thing, like, you're only one person and there's only 168 hours in a week. And sure, Jack, I can do this, but I'm going to sit in front of my computer all day long, and I'm going to have to give up eating and family and friends and anything else I love. And could I do this? Yes. And for 40 new leads a month, could I do this? Yes. But anything else outside of that will have to go away, because this is all I have time for. And that's where we run into problems, and that's where agents start to lose and where the wheels start to fall off. And so what we focus on at Zurple is, you've got to have technology as a partner that can help you do this. You can't do this all on your own. You are only one person. There's only one of you to go around, or maybe you're a small team, but still, there's only a small portion of you to go around. And so having the right technology tools that will go and focus on these four things for you, while you're putting fires out on transactions, or you're going to have, client meet and greets or open houses, like, that stuff's important. You can't give up that stuff, because the one-on-one stuff really what moves the business. But you also can't give up on this, because without this, then you have less of the one-on-one, right? And so, really having that technology partner that can step in and help you do some of this is going to be vital. And then I think, like, it's not also, it's also a little bit about not putting your eggs in one basket. And like I said, I never coach agents to go and just go spend money on lead generation, or no, you know what, just go spend time. I think it's a combination of both. And I think you as the agent have to make that decision, because you're the CEO of your own business. We can't make that for you, but you really got to put down on paper, what is the business plan? How much money compared to time are you willing to spend to generate leads to get there? And then I think it's implementing that along with the right approach and the right tools. And then all of a sudden, every single day becomes kind of Christmas morning for you, right? Because you're having this excitement of people in your store, and you can see what they're doing. And maybe they're not even responding to you yet or having conversations yet, but the fact that they're shopping on your website and looking at homes every day, that has to be exciting because they're not on Zillow, right? So every time they're on your website and looking at houses on your website, they're seeing your brand. That's exciting. And this is what Marilyn, this is what you were talking about, right? Is lead follow-up is a process and not an event. Like this is something that it's living, right? Lead process is actually a living thing. And it's not just a one-time thing. Hey, let me focus real quick and do this. This is something like you've got to block out time. You've got to make it a priority because it is such a big part of your business.
Definitely.
And I've added some classic mindset mistakes here, and I know we're kind of running low on time, so I'll kind of get through these really quick. But you know, I've kind of talked about the good lead or bad leads for top agents, and look, I'm not a firm believer on that there's bad leads. I think that all leads are created equal, and where they fit on the timeline and understanding that is going to be beneficial for you. And how do you understand where they are on the timeline? You can just tell based on some of the content they're looking for. And again, that's having the right technology tools that gives you kind of that lead insight that I was talking about. Believing the quality of the lead is determined when the person's going to buy, or maybe they give you a phone number. That's a good lead, right? Not necessarily true. Thinking that all old leads are bad and only new leads are good. Like there's 97% of the database for agents that they've spent either time or money on. There's some low-hanging fruit there, right? With the right technology, you could get more out of that. I talked about this one already, having a phone number, and then just because they form filled or they became a lead on your website, that's just the beginning. There's a lot of work to do to get there. So here's what I've said is successful lead gen and follow-up is kind of blocking time for lead follow-up, even if you have some technology or someone on your team that's going to focus on that. Block the time out, make it a calendar event, right? Make it that important. And then how are you going to deliver personalized value to old and new leads? So it's not just the new leads that are coming in, but think about your existing database. How could you go and re-engage those leads with personalized experience or value? And then I think, you know, consumer behavior is changing rapidly. So now we can't necessarily depend on face-to-face connections anymore. So I think technology is probably more important than it ever was. So how are you going to implement some of that technology to get you to the point where now you're looking for these consumer triggers, right? These are reasons why I would reach out to a consumer, not because, well, I haven't heard from this person in a while, so let me do the age-old, I'm a salesperson, I want to reconnect. Hey, you still in the market? Haven't heard from you in a while. That's a sales call or a sales email. No one answers that, right? But if I know that I get that back on my website and they looked at 3 more homes or they saved a home, these are all reasons for me to reach back out with relevant content. So action items here, I've put some action items for the audience, Marilyn. If they go to this website here, go.zurple.com/RET20, you can download the free lead generation plus the marketing budget calculator. Awesome. Like I said, I think understanding how many leads you need in your business is probably step 1, right? And that's the first part where you start. And then next is, again, determining that. So once you have the tools, plug in some of your information and determine how many leads you need to start generating. And I think setting goals every 30 days, start setting goals for yourself and start tracking, are you winning or losing, and what needs to change in order to hit some of those goals on the lead gen side.
And then, on that calculator, does it help you, you know, if an agent goes back and look, they can kind of understand their average price point? So if they ultimately want to know how much money I'm going to take home from a commission, does it help you kind of think your way through that of like, oh, my average house is 400,000, that means I'm going to get action. Perfect. Okay, good.
Yeah, so the lead calculator is pretty dynamic. You plug in your own information, right? So as far as what you think your conversion rate is, what your ARPU is, and we call ARPU average price, right? So average revenue per price. So that's basically what you said. If your average sale price on a home in your market is 400,000, then you could plug that in, and then you put in your actual commission split as well. And so you kind of work backwards and say, look, this is my goal, whether it's transactions or income, and
Right.
these are some of the drivers or KPIs. And it's going to work backwards and say, okay, well, this is how many leads that you need to start generating if you want to hit these goals.
And then if I wanted to work with Zurple to do that, then can I hand that to my salesperson or my account person and say, this is what I need, and then they would help you figure out how to get there?
Yep. So definitely, you can definitely go to Zurple, and there's, definitely if you go to this website, this URL that I've put here, there's ways to, raise your hand, and one of my consultants can reach out and have a conversation. And I think, to kind of give you some insight on how that conversation goes, like I think, come to that conversation as an agent with a snapshot of your business. The only way that we can really truly help you if we understand your business and kind of where the roadblocks are in your business. What are we solving? What are the 2 or 3 biggest things you want to solve in the next 6 months? And then let my consultant kind of go to work and kind of put a plan together on, okay, like this is over the next 6 months, here's what we can do, here's what you can expect to see, and this is a snapshot of what your business can look like, 12 months from now.
Perfect. Yeah. So we can get specific about what we might want to do. That's awesome. Okay,
right.
Great.
Right. And like I said, here's some of my contact information. If anyone, directly wants to connect with me, that's great too. The URL is great because it has some tools there so as an agent, my guess is you want to fill out some of these tools and kind of have a better idea, and then talk to one of the consultants that kind of can put that plan together for you. And so you can look at that plan and say, wow, okay, this is definitely a fit with what I need to do for my business or where I want my business to go, or maybe it's not, and that's fine too, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's kind of understanding, look, you're in a position as an agent to capitalize on the market, and you should be putting together a business plan to get you through the second half of 2020 and get you through the beginning of 2021. We can help with that.
Perfect. Great. So do we have any questions that came through? Bailey,
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't see any.
No questions yet.
So, so there's a question that that somebody just texted me that somebody must be listening, but I don't know why maybe they're on their phone. I don't know. So if someone said, let's just take a scenario, Jack. So, I'm normally doing, let's say, 3 deals a month, and I feel like, I've sat around a lot during COVID. I'm ready to, I'm riled up. I want to get going again, and say that within the next year, I'd like to ramp it up to 6 deals. I basically want to double the size of my business in a year. What would you suggest? Like, how would they get started to even think about doing that? And mindset wise and technology wise, how would they get there?
So I think it's one, like I said, starting with a lead gen plan. So understanding how many leads you're going to need. And then for me, it sounds like if I want to get there by the end of this year, that's a quick timeline, right? And so I think you have to combine spending money on lead generation and time. I think spending money on lead generation, particularly the search engines, is probably the fastest or instant gratification leads, right? Because these are consumers that, like, we generate a ton of leads for our clients on search engines, and our buying power goes a lot further than the individual agent can do on their own. And so you think about some of the, we're using 150 to 200 keywords. And so a lot of times we're finding consumers that are further down the timeline. And so that's why I say those are a little bit instant gratification leads. And then combine that with, I think the next thing you have to go after is social media, which in the last 8 months, we put a lot of effort into our technology of adding social media tools in, because I know it's such a way for agents to capitalize on meeting more and more consumers. And so it's built into the tools. And so we've actually done a great job of giving the best of both worlds to those agents that I can go and generate leads on social media and generate leads on the search engines, but it's all combined into one platform. So they don't have to, the biggest thing I think the mistake agents make is they piece together their business and all these different logins. They have 20 different logins. What we try to do is formalize that into one. Like, everything's feeding in. Even if you're buying leads on Zillow, those can even filter into the Zurple platform. Everything should feed into your business and your store.
So it's all in one place. So here's an interesting question that may be good for more than just one person. I'm a new agent. How do I respond to a lead when they ask you, what is your experience? So what's that relevant content that can get them past the fact that I don't have years and years of experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, I get this question, believe it or not, I get this question a lot from my sales team. So agents ask my salespeople that same question. And I'll give you the same coaching I give my sales team is, you don't necessarily have to have a lot of experience in this business, but my guess is you've chosen to hang your license at a brand and a brokerage. And I think you can use their years of expertise as your value proposition. So even though you're new, you are backed by years and years of experience, I think, and good agents and a good process around you that you can use. And then I think it's, having the good tools, having a very consumer-focused website, and the ability to provide relevant content is actually going to hit that that value proposition home because of the ability for you to provide them and be on the same, you're at the same place, same time, because you can see what's important to them and you're providing that instead of being that salesperson. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, here's another interesting question. You probably have some data on this, Chuck, because you guys do so much. Are consumers going to Facebook to find a house?
They are. Facebook is kind of becoming the new Google of where Google was 10 years ago. Facebook is kind of growing that way. There's a ton of consumers that are searching on Facebook for homes for sale, right? Which is kind of interesting that one of the things I've seen our clients do a lot is they're doing a lot of ads on Facebook and Instagram. And the difference is it's not that value proposition that it used to be. Like back in the day on the postcards, you used to send out postcards, and what was the call of action? It was to call me, right? And now the call of action on these Facebook and Instagram ads is not to call me, but they're driving them to their consumer-focused store. Because if I can get them in my website before they go to Zillow, then they're never going to meet another agent. Let me get them sucked in to my this personalized experience. And I call this the Facebook technology, which is ironic because we're talking about Facebook. But the Facebook technology to me is, Marilyn, if I tagged you in a post today, what's going to happen is you're going to get notified and you're going to go and see what that post is. And my guess is you're going to look at that post, which takes what, 10 seconds, 15 seconds? Mm-hmm. But you're not just going to close Facebook. Facebook will suck you in for another 5 or 10 minutes to see what everyone else is doing. Mm-hmm. And so I call that Facebook technology. Facebook is very good at it. I think Zillow is very good at that. I think Zillow sucks consumers in. And so I want you as the agent to have that same type of technology. When they come to your website, it should suck them in. There's so much content there, and it's so consumer focused that they have no reason to leave. And I think that you can do really good and really successful Facebook ads and Instagram ads if you have that consumer focused website as your backdrop.
For sure. And another part of Facebook that's really powerful too is Facebook Marketplace, especially if you're a newer agent and maybe don't have a full book of business with residential yet. Rentals can be a great place to pay the bills. Facebook Marketplace does a phenomenal job generating leads for rentals. Like, I've talked to an agent recently, they got 350 leads in 1 month for rentals from Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah. It's the old Craigslist. You remember 7 years ago when Craigslist was like the hottest thing. I was doing a couple seminars a week on Craigslist, generating 400 leads a month on Craigslist. And I think Craigslist, by the way, still exists. You just have to spend a little bit now. But I think Facebook Marketplace is very similar to me. And here's the thing, like, you're gonna get a ton of leads, and what I always hear is, those leads suck. Again, go back to my point. It's not that they suck. They're just very early in the timeline. They're just in a different spot. And yes, or if you compared that lead to a Google search engine lead, then that is a different lead. And this is why people spend money on, this is why some of our clients spend money on us generating Google leads for them, because it's not a better quality lead. They're just further down the timeline, because I can use so many keywords and hone them in that consumer is just probably in phase 2 compared to phase 1 where you're generating this lead back here. So that's the difference.
This is great, Jack. Thank you so much for all of your, I would call it worlds of wisdom. Just school of hard knocks. You've learned what works for real estate, and thank you for building technology that recognizes the realities of what we all go through as sales professionals. So if anybody needs any more information, you see that right on the screen there, go.zurple.com/RET20, or just reach out to Jack. He's a really nice guy, and he wears really cute t-shirts, so he's a great guy. Everyone have a great day, and we will be sending out a recording of this, so if you want to share it with any of your friends and family or brokers or agents or whatever, feel free. And with that, we'll tune out today. Thank you so much, Jack. This was awesome.
Thanks, Marilyn. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.